Happy Feast of St. Louis Marie de Montfort. Peter St. George again with the Sems on the Saints series. And today we're talking about one of my favorite saints, Louis Marie de Montfort. So, French saint, great lover of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and a priest, and one of the most important saints in the life of John Paul II, as well as many people right now. He promoted something called the True Devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary, which in the past couple of years has just exploded. Tons of people are making this total consecration to Mary, and it has just shown to be super effective in helping people to grow in holiness and grow in closeness to Jesus Christ. So I want to tell you a little bit about my own experience with St. Louis Marie de Montfort and how he helped me to grow closer to Jesus through Mary. So first of all, just a little story about my own experience. I grew up in a very Catholic family. Went to Mass every weekend. Received the sacraments faithfully. Had like something of a prayer life. Say night prayers, maybe morning prayers and stuff. But about halfway through college, I had a great sort of deepening in my faith. The gospel word for it would be a metanoia, going to a deeper and greater knowledge of Christ and a changing of the way in which I knew Christ, I loved Christ, and I approached my life as a Christian. And what I realized is that Christ has been kind of one thing amongst many in my life. I love to play soccer. I am, a dedicated student. I want to be a doctor. I have all these friends. I'm a Catholic. And so the problem there is that, like, being a Catholic, being a person who loves Christ, that has to be the center of your life. And that's what I suddenly realized. Or rather, I knew was always true, but suddenly I felt the Holy Spirit moving me to live in a different way and newly embrace Christ as the center of my life. I remember a distinct moment. I was on a run thinking about this, and all of a sudden I just realized, like, if I don't love Christ first, I won't ever really love anyone truly. Unless the love in my life flows out of love for Christ, everything else is going to be sort of like paltry and not what it could be. So I have to love Christ first and totally, and then give everything to him, and he'll sort of direct everything else. So I was filled with this great movement of the Holy Spirit to begin to live this way with greater love for Jesus. But I didn't really know how. And it was about this time that I picked up a book by St. Louis Marie de Montfort called The True Devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary, which it's probably one of my favorite books. I would put it like top 5 great reads of all time for me. And the reason is that he gave me a way of living this new love for Christ that I had, a practical sort of ordering of my life in order to be entirely Christ's. And the fundamental thing for him is to give yourself entirely to Mary so that she can give you entirely to Jesus Christ. Mary always makes the right decision, right? We see, if we look at like Mary compared to Zechariah in the Gospels, an angel shows up and says, hey, like this miraculous birth is going to happen. And we can see in the different ways in which they respond that Mary gets it right, and we kind of, like Zechariah, usually kind of mess it up. So Zechariah, when he hears that Elizabeth is going to be miraculously pregnant, he's like, how can I believe you? He says, how shall I know this? Which roughly means, like, I don't trust you. Like, you got any signs that can prove that what you're saying is true? And because he says this, he's made mute. He can't talk for the next 9 months of the whole pregnancy. We don't want to end up in that category. But we look at Mary, and Gabriel comes and he says an even greater sort of miraculous birth, that she's going to be the mother of the Son of God, and she's not going to get pregnant by a man. And she's like, how shall this be? Not how shall I know this? She says, how's this going to happen? Like, I trust you, so like how are we going to proceed with this? I trust God, so how is God going to make this work? And we see clearly that the Holy Spirit comes and makes Mary pregnant with the Son of God, this great miracle. So, why do I talk about that story? Well, we want to ask Mary to sort of make our decisions for us in some sense. We want to ask Mary, this is Louis Marie de Montfort's sort of idea of a spiritual life. If we give ourselves wholly over to Mary, she'll show us the best way to give ourselves over to Christ. She'll like a mother, kind of get us ready, get us dressed, clean us up, make us look ideal, like make us look great, and then bring us to her Son, so that Jesus is sort of extra pleased that we are so close to his mother, whom he's given us, as a way to bring us closer to himself. So we see also in the Gospels, we see Jesus, Mary, and John at the crucifixion. This is a really important passage for Louis Marie de Montfort, that on the cross, right before he dies, Jesus looks down at Mary and John, and he calls John the beloved disciple. But he looks at Mary and he says, "Woman, behold your son." And he says to the beloved disciple, "Behold your mother." And so for St. Louis, the idea is to be like John, to be the beloved disciple, and the way of doing that is to take Mary as your mother. So we're to be obedient to Christ on the cross and take Mary into our lives, ask her to put our lives in order, sort of ask her to feed us, ask her to do everything a mother does so that we can grow into the full stature of Jesus Christ. And so it was in reading this book by St. Louis Marie de Montfort and beginning to practice this total consecration to Mary, where I give her everything so that she can give me entirely to Christ, that I began to actually live that metanoia that I experienced. And the fruit of that, the fruit of living that way, was discerning that the Lord was calling me to be a priest, and so to enter seminary, and then on a whole new level even ask Mary not to just form me as a Christian, but to form me as a priest, form me into the image of her Son, who is the head of the church. And so to one day hope to be a priest who acts in the person of Christ the head, I especially ask Mary to continue to form me in that way. So I hope this has given you a little bit of an idea of what St. Louis Marie de Montfort is about, and I hope especially that you will take Mary as your own mother and ask her to bring you closer and closer to Jesus Christ. God bless.